What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Also at Max Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 265. And we got a lot coming up this week, football-wise, baseball-wise, everything. We know our championship series matchups. We're down to 4 teams. And in the NFL, things are still very unclear, but we're going to try to make sense of that with a tier list.
Yeah. As soon as you think the Bills are the best team in the NFL, they lose their next 2 games. That's just kind of how NFL seasons usually go. Usually how the Bills seasons go. Hot start and then cooling down and then getting hot again. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Before we get that, we have some openers. So we got to get to the best things that we saw this past week. So you got a funny one or kind of funny one on here, depending on what your perspective is. Go ahead and tell me what you got.
Yeah, and this is more so like, oh, man, we got to talk about this for a second. Then this is the greatest thing I saw. James Franklin was fired from Penn State after they lose to Northwestern, man. That is crazy. We talked about a couple weeks ago, especially after the Oregon game, it was a pretty down year for Drew Aller. He's also now out for the season with an ankle injury. Looks like he's just going to go right ahead to getting ready for the combine, seeing if he could do anything in a couple months from now. But really, this was all on James Franklin. Like, he hasn't beaten anyone good. They're like 4-22 against top 20 teams since he's taken over. And this was the nail in the coffin. His thing was always, we can beat the bad teams. We just struggle on prime time. They lose to Northwestern and UCLA back to back. He's out of there, man. $48 million buyout. And I recently learned there's something in his contract. Until that buyout is done, he has to keep interviewing for jobs either as a coach or on TV. So it looks like we're possibly going to see James Franklin go to a smaller program for 4 years or just join Nick Saban on ESPN, one of the two. Either way, I don't buy the Cignetti stuff. I think he's going to play with them a little bit and then end up just going back to Indiana because at this point, that's a similar tier program. I mean, those guys were just in the playoff. And maybe call John Gruden. I know we joked about it with the Dolphins, but dude, I mean, he's definitely got the energy for college. We'll say that. Just a crazy week for Penn State football. Those guys are done.
Yeah. I think James Franklin lands in nice CBS booth where he doesn't have to go do games. He just has a couple of pre-games, once a week and rides out the rest of that contract because you can kind of hide away on CBS, I'd say. If you're on ESPN with like Pat McAfee, Nick Saban, those dudes might find a way to just make you hate your life, to be honest with you, if you're James Franklin. So I would feel sorry for him, but he's making $48 million. So, how sorry can I feel for him? Anyways, best thing I saw Friday night, we got treated to one of the best games that we've ever seen in MLB playoff history when the Seattle Mariners went to the ALCS for the first time in my lifetime, not technically your lifetime, but definitely mine by a couple of months. First time since 2001, and they got there in dramatic fashion, needing a 15th inning walk-off single from Jorge Polanco to beat the Tigers 3-2. And this game just had all the stuff that you want when it goes into playoff baseball. You had big hit moments from guys like Kerry Carpenter. You had phenomenal pitching and getting out of jams. Tariq Skubal, 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 13 Ks in his start in this game. Guys like Torrey Melting, Keter Montero, Jack Flaherty, Will Vest. On the other side for the Mariners, Matt Brash, Andres Munoz, Logan Gilbert, Eduardo Pizarro, Luis Castillo, like you name it, George Kirby, like they all pitch well in this game. That's exactly what you have happen in MLB playoff games. You had a whole bunch of anticipation, whether it was runners on early or crazy defensive plays in this game. This game really had you on, the edge of your seat from the 6th inning on. And from the 6th inning to the 15th inning, you practically just got a whole another game of baseball, which is pretty cool. I know there's a lot of people that usually don't watch baseball games watching this game, which is something I usually love to see when the game kind of expands a little bit. And we got that in this one. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that we expected the Mariners also to, be tired maybe going into their series against Toronto. They were not tired. They just took it to the Blue Jays the first couple of games of that series up 2-0. heading back home to Seattle to change that series up. And man, when that game happens tomorrow, you can expect the crowd in Seattle to be quite loud. I would say, probably going to see some crazy decibel numbers if somebody's tracking that stuff. But definitely the best game that I saw this week, and hopefully we continue to have some great matchups in the playoffs and some big games. I know last night, even in the Dodger Brewer game, was a fun one to watch, and that game won. So maybe we'll be treated to a great game too. But before we get to some more baseball stuff, we're going to go to the NFL and do our Player of the Week and Contender tier list here. We'll start off with our Player of the Week, Skyler. Is it Rico Dowdle?
Yeah, I said, all right, I'll give it to him this week. So last week, Rico Dowdle has 200 yards against Miami, and I thought, okay, pretty cool, but I don't really care. The Dolphins sucked, probably just lucky. Now this week, he gets 34 touches for 239 from scrimmage. They beat his old team, the Cowboys, by 3. They get to 3-3, and Rico Dowdle looks like the best player on the Panthers for 2 weeks in a row. So I don't think this is a coincidence anymore.
Oh, you thought Stephon Diggs had a fun revenge game? Rico Dowdle just went up to him in that game between the Panthers and the Cowboys. Like you said, 34 touches, 183 on the ground, 56 through the air, and a touchdown as well, too. Rico Dowdle came out of nowhere to 3rd in the NFL in rushing in the past couple of weeks, and that's just ridiculous to even think about. So Rico is my Player of the Week, which takes us to the Defensive Player of the Week.
Shout out to your guy, Devin White. It's another one of those guys, if you're not watching that game, if you're not a fan, you won't know how much he does for you. But I am thinking Brian Burns for this week. 2 sacks, couple hits on Jalen Hurts, crazy upset win over the Eagles. He's already got 7 sacks this year.
I did go Devin White on this one. 9 total tackles, a forced fumble on a strip sack that was at the 2-yard line. So obviously set up the Raiders touchdown, which was a Genty touchdown, I want to say. Or maybe it was Michael Mayer. Regardless, it was one of the two. He practically got an assist for that touchdown. He also had an interception at the end of the first half when the Titans were in field goal range. Maybe that's more on Cam Ward than it is on Devin White, but regardless, he was right there at the right time. He had a big game, his best game as a Raider so far, and looked like old school LSU Devin White for the guy who's still only like 27 years old or something like that, which is crazy to think about how long he's been in the league. On to Rookie of the Week.
I got co-winners for Rookie of the Week, also from the New York Football Giants, Jackson Dart and Cam Skattebo. Dart has looked great when he's not concussed. 200 through the air, another 50 plus on the ground with a touchdown. And Skattebo, I think, plays better with more concussions. He has 98 with 3 touchdowns. And again, this is against Philadelphia, who probably should have destroyed these guys. They weren't ready. The Giants had way more energy, and they crushed them thanks to the rookies and the defense.
Yeah, perhaps the biggest upset that we've seen the entire NFL season so far was that game on Thursday night. I did go with Cam Skattebo for mine, over 100 total yards, 3 rushing touchdowns on 19 attempts. Jackson Dart, obviously, reasonable person to put in here as well, too. I just put Skattebo because I think he was probably the main story of that game, and just his craziness and his shirts off moment with Ryan Fitzpatrick after the game in the Thursday Night Football Amazon Prime booth was pretty crazy to see. So I'll go with the Arizona State rookie for now, but I would not be shocked if Jackson Dart gets into 1 or 2 more at least of these Rookie of the Week as we continue on through the NFL season, which brings me to our NFL Contender tier list. We do these, maybe once or twice a year. I think it's a good thing to check up on, and where it's not really numerical value, it's just qualitative value and putting them into the tier. I think we both chose tier lists that have 7 tiers, so we should see some pretty similar stuff here. S through F, obviously, you can change your titles to, Super Bowl favorites, whatever you want to do. We'll start from the bottom. My bottom tier list, or bottom tier, is named Time to Look at Tankathon. I'll let you go ahead and give out what teams you have in your bottom and what it's called.
Yeah, mine is called Mock Draft Season, which is essentially the same exact thing. I'll start off with the New York Jets. No Jet Report. But these guys are in trouble, man. I mean, holy cow. -10 passing yards, but we don't need to get any more into that. Everybody watched it, unfortunately. That's the funny part is when everyone gets to watch the Jets and I have 100 texts, they're like, dude, why is this game so horrible? Like, because it's the Jets. Also, the Tennessee Titans in there, they couldn't get anything going against the Raiders, who their defense played much better, of course, but still, I don't think these guys are doing anything. They just fired their coach. The Cleveland Browns, they're already down to basically all rookies. And quarterback Dylan Gabriel, again, not great. I also have Miami. I think their season's about done. Tua is just not good anymore. At first, it was an injury thing. Now he's just making horrible decisions every game when it's important. We've seen it now a couple times. And also New Orleans Saints. Again, Rattler's playing great. They've been competitive. But at the end of the day, they're going to be sellers at the deadline. That's the mock draft season.
Yeah, time to look at Tankathon for me, which is pretty much a synonym of what you had. I think is kind of funny. I have 4 teams in here. I'll start off with the Jets. If you're 0-6 through 6 weeks, you kind of have to be in this bottom tier. I do not think the Jets would be this bad. But when you look at the pre-snap penalties, just the consistent fuck-ups throughout the team, just like the consistent minor fuck-ups. I don't even think it's a major thing. Just doing all these small things wrong is really harmful to their team, of course. And I think it's driving Aaron Glenn crazy, who I don't think is a bad coach either. I think he's just been dealt, a young team that's prone to making mistakes on both sides of the ball. But probably looking for a quarterback come April. So the Jets are in here. I also have the Saints, which have actually been a pleasant surprise for me. 1-5, the record isn't great, but I think they're a more fun team to watch than what I expected. Spencer Rattler's been pretty solid. The offense hasn't been that bad as a whole. Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara, running back duo is not that bad, to be honest with you. Chris Olave is having a good season. Rashid Shaheed's had some formidable games. Taysom Hill's coming back from injury, and we know Juwan Johnson has seen some valuable targets there as well, too. The defense definitely isn't great. It is probably the biggest reason why they're losing most of these games, but I don't think it's the worst group in the NFL either. They're just not a good team when it comes down to it. They're not as good as the other teams that they're playing. Is the biggest thing. The Titans just fired their head coach. The offensive line is terrible. Cam Ward's struggling. He doesn't really have a great receiver to throw to. The defense, like we talked about, has been solid at most parts. I just think they're on the field a little bit too much. They have some stars. Jeffrey Simmons, namely, is a game wrecker. We saw him do that against the Raiders this past week. And then the Browns, just a really young team. I don't think Dylan Gabriel's been bad either. Very much staying to his specialty of making the right read, quick throws, stuff like that. Nothing crazy downfield. And I think they're doing a good job with that. The defense is still solid. But if you're 1-5, and you got rookies all over the place, you're not going to be in a good spot, especially when it comes down to week 12 or week 13, and you're playing in spots that these players just have never gotten to before. So I think the Browns are out of it for sure. And moving on to Tankathon. As we move on to the 6th tier of the tier list, I have hanging on by a thread as this. I'm sure you have something similar there.
Danger zone.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll let you go ahead.
I do. I want to mention something about the Browns before we move on because you just reminded me. Gabriel's playing fine. And there are still people who are crying for Shadur Sanders. It's not a political thing anymore. It's like if you throw him back there, he's going to get destroyed. He's going to get beaten down so bad every time he tries to scramble. This is for his safety. People don't understand that. That's why Jake Browning's gone in Cincinnati. They were going to kill that man. So perfect transition, danger zone, Cincinnati Bengals. They got a new quarterback, Joe Flacco. They're hoping he keeps the train moving along here. I mean, at least he's not going to blow the game for you, right? But still, I think they're 2-4 now, or 3-2-4. Yeah, 2-4. Good. I'm going to have that one wrong. I still don't love it, man. They're falling way behind in their division. Feel the same way about the Arizona Cardinals. Again, it's tough when you have quarterback injuries. But still, I feel like this team was headed nowhere before that. Their coach, I would have fired last week. I don't like it over there. The last team in the danger zone is the Raiders. And, defense is playing much better. But Geno Smith, has some age on him now. I think it's fair to say, and I'm not saying that he can't figure this out, but the teams above just have way more confidence in their quarterbacks, and it's the same problem that we've seen with the Jets, right? If you don't trust your guy to throw the ball downfield, you're kind of fucked when you go down in a game. Luckily, last week they were okay. That's my danger zone. Only 3 teams.
Yeah, I have 4 teams here in my hanging on by a thread spot. The first of which is the Dolphins. I think they're a bit more formidable than the 4 teams I had in the Tankathon spot. I'd be less surprised if they beat a decent team than the other 4 teams that I've already talked about. I think they've also played a bit of a harder schedule as well too. The Chargers, Bills, teams like that, pretty rough, and they haven't looked terrible in those games either. The Bills, it was like a 10-point game. Chargers, they lose by a field goal. Some other games too, kind of like that as well. But Tyreek's hurt. The defense isn't great. Tua is Tua. That's all I really need to get into there. The Bengals are the next team. They're not also 2-4. They are 2-4 though. Joe Flacco's in there, and when you're relying on Joe Flacco for your season, you're probably not in the greatest spot unless you're the 2011 Baltimore Ravens. Defense obviously isn't good. The run game isn't good. The offensive line isn't good. We're going to see some explosive games from his passing offense. I think Flacco could kind of just find himself into a 300-yard game against a pretty mid defense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think he's got the ability to do that, but to seriously win games and be okay when Joe Burrow comes back in December is not going to happen. So the Bengals are just hanging on by a thread right now. If they lose a couple more games, they're definitely out. The Cardinals, another team that you talked about that I'll put in here as well too, start off 2-0 against the Saints and the Panthers. People thought they were possibly going to win against the Niners. People thought they were possibly going to win against the Seahawks. I never had a ton of faith in the Cardinals because they just don't like to run the ball in a good fashion. And I know they've dealt with kind of injuries with that now of Connor and now Trey Benson. And the running back room is now Bam Knight and Michael Carter, which were on the one-win Jets like 3 years ago. So that kind of tells you where that is. The defense, I think, has had some solid moments, but isn't a great group either. They held into it last game against the Colts over the weekend, but if they lose another game or two in that division, they are cooked. And then the Raiders, I also have in here as well, too. When your quarterback has 10 interceptions through 6 games, I don't care about how good your defense is. You're not going to win much. 2-4, the 2 wins, the Titans, and then also the Patriots, which I think is a little bit of a curveball now as we look into week 6 or week 7 at this point. But Geno Smith is just not going to get it done for you. I do think when you compare the Raiders to these other teams we've talked about, they're probably a bit better at every other spot except quarterback. But when Geno Smith is turning over the football as much as he had, it's really, really bad. So Raiders are hanging on by a thread, and they play Kansas City this week. So that tells you where we're at.
Good luck.
On to the 5th tier, though, probably getting some larger tiers here. I had probably not a playoff team, is what this tier is called. I'll let you go ahead and go first, though.
Yeah, this tier for me has 4 teams. It is called I Might Need a New Head Coach. And that'll make more sense as we go in. We'll start off with the New York Giants. Makes sense with them. Obviously, Brian Dable cares a lot. They're playing really well right now over the past couple weeks with the young guys stepping up. But I don't know how long this can last. Jackson Dart's pretty reckless out there. So I don't expect this same pace. A little worried about the Giants. I think Brian Dable ends up getting fired too if they don't win over 7 games. Maybe a surprise, the 3-3 Panthers. Also, again, maybe it's not Canales' fault. Maybe it's Bryce Young. But it's another week. Maybe it was a fluke game. We'll see how they look against the Jets this week, who are clearly terrible. There's no argument there. So if they lose to them, it's over. Again, I'm sticking with the mindset of Bryce Young's bad. The defense is even worse. Also, right next to them is the Cowboys, who they beat. I think Schottenheimer's called fantastic games on offense. This is a guy who took Mark Sanchez to the playoffs. But he obviously knows nothing about defense. These guys can't get a stop for their life. It's the same shit every single year with these guys. So that's why I have him here. And also, again, maybe a shocker for the beginning of the season, but I've seen more and more the last team here that might need a new coach, the Baltimore Ravens. Same exact story as Dallas. Like if you're giving up crazy yards on the outside every single game, it's really hard to do anything. They've kind of abandoned the run game, and they don't have Lamar Jackson right now. And he's supposed to come back after the bye. I think that's after week 7, which is this
Mm-hmm.
week. Um, but they're just starting off so slow right now. I don't know if they have enough time to catch up.
Yeah. My probably not a playoff team tier has 6 teams in it, so a bit of a larger tier here. First off, I'll start with the 1-5 Baltimore Ravens, which have the worst record out of any team in this spot. When you start off 1-3, albeit a rough schedule, at Buffalo, at Kansas City, also against the Lions in there as well too. You're behind the 8 ball. When your quarterback also gets hurt in that span, a 2-time MVP, and then you lose your next 2 games, you're in an even worse spot. Especially when you look at, I forget which game it was. I think it was their last game, not against the Rams, but the Texans. Before that, their inactive list was 7 Pro Bowlers or something like that with Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey. All these different dudes were hurt. Obviously, they're not going to win. They're just in a really rough spot. This is the beat up team of 2025, not including the Niners, I'd say. And when you start off this bad, even with Lamar Jackson, if he comes back fully healthy week 8 and plays the best football of his career, you practically need to go 10-1 over these next 11 games if you want to make the playoffs, and that's probably not going to happen. Next team is the Giants, which I think have been a bit of a pleasant surprise since their slow start. That's 2-4 right now. Good wins over the Eagles and the Chargers. But they lost to the Saints in that result too. So that's going to tell you exactly what the Giants are right now. They have a rookie quarterback, rookie running back, a lot of young pieces, a very fun defensive line, but they're going to be volatile. They're going to be good one week, bad the next. I don't think it works out in the long term, especially with some divisional opponents that even though that they beat this past week, I don't think they're better than in the grand scheme of things. Next up, the Carolina Panthers, winners of 2 in a row, was the Dolphins and the Cowboys. But I don't think anybody's saying that the Panthers are going to be in it. Come late December with their team. 3-3 doesn't really. I mean, it kind of shocks me, but I'm not bought in on this team at all. Their defense still has some real issues. The run game has been great the past couple of weeks, and I think with Chuba coming back, that duo will be pretty damn good. But you're playing 2 of the worst run defenses in all of football in Miami and Dallas. And, that's not to disregard what Rico Dowdle did these past few weeks, but when they're playing Tampa Bay, it's not going to go like that. So I think when it comes down to it, Carolina's going to lose the games that they need the most, and they'll be out of it. The Dallas Cowboys, super fun team to watch. If you got George Pickens on fantasy, you got Dak Prescott on fantasy, they're super fun to watch. They throw the ball all the time. They score a ton of touchdowns. But what's made the Dallas Cowboys teams good in the past, even with the defenses that give up a lot of points, is they get those big pick sixes or big turnovers from Deron Bland or Trayvon Diggs in past years. They're not getting any of that this year, not at all. And when that's gone and those 1 or 2 possessions that you get that turn into points for their defense go away, it becomes impossible to win games when you're allowing as many points as they do. So the Dallas Cowboys not going to be a playoff team, although they are a very fun team to watch. So I'd say last year's Bengals, kind of the equivalent there. Next up is the Texans. They just had their bye week, so I think that helps them after the big win over the Ravens. But they are 2-3. The offense has not looked great. I know the defense has looked really good. Only 61 points in 5 games is, I think, probably one of the best in the NFL right now, if not the best as far as points allowed. But their offense with C.J. Stroud in the run game does not look very confident to me. The division's better than I expected with Jacksonville and Indianapolis. And if you're the 3rd best team in your division, you're probably not a playoff team. And then the last one, maybe a bit of a shocker. I have the Patriots here. They're 4-2. But I'm really not impressed with a lot of their victories. I know Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, great win. But you beat the Dolphins. You beat the Panthers. You beat the Saints. You've lost to the Raiders and the Steelers. I'm not seeing it. They'll probably go 6-2 with Titans and the Browns these next couple of weeks, but I don't love their defense. I don't love the run game. I actually hate the run game. And while Drake May's been good, I don't think he has the targets around him besides Stephon Diggs to really be a, you know, constant machine on offense. So when they play the Bucks or they play the Bills or the Ravens late in the season, I don't think those games are gonna work out for them. But I mean, their schedule in general is actually pretty easy. So maybe they'll find the way into 10 wins. But I don't like this Patriots team in the grand scheme of things. So that does it for that tier. My next tier is the playoff hopefuls. What do you got for that? The fourth tier.
Yeah, I called this one. I just don't see it. This could also be like the race to 9 wins. A lot of NFC teams in here. The first one of them to get to 9 wins will probably be the one who gets the last wild card spot. I have 5 teams here. We'll start off with the Chicago Bears, 3-2, big win last night over the Commanders. But I can't help but think this was a little fluky the last 2 weeks against the Raiders and the Commanders. Whether it was a fumble or a blocked kick, they played like a horrible 3 quarters and then pulled it out at the end. I don't know how sustainable that is. So, I'll put them in the middle, 500. How about the other team that won last night? Surprisingly, Atlanta Falcons. Again, when the run game's working, these guys look pretty unstoppable. But like I thought, they're not really in the same category as Tampa Bay, who's been running the South. And Michael Penix hasn't had to do much yet. I mean, like I said, I'm not rooting against him. You got to show me a little more, I think, before I move him out of this middle tier. Similar to Washington, and again, I know the quarterback was hurt too. That's maybe its own category when we do this again. It's like, pretty good team, but the quarterback was hurt for 3 weeks, so you're not, in the upper tier anymore. At least the run game is looking a little better. They did beat the Chargers, who aren't in this category. So they're alive, of course, but I'm going to keep them in the 500 tier. Same with the Houston Texans, the only AFC team I have over here. You just got to score some more points, man. I mean, of course they could do it. They got a pretty good coach, pretty good quarterback most of the time, but we haven't seen it yet. They've only beaten teams that they were supposed to beat. And the last team that I just don't see it from yet is Minnesota. Of course, another team with an injured quarterback. Maybe we rename this tier at the end of the day, but Carson Wentz has been okay. Defense has been okay. Running game has been okay. That's like 8-9 wins. So I think this is a good spot for them until they can prove me otherwise. Because I know you expected a lot more from them. This is about where I had them.
I got 5 teams in my playoff hopefuls category, the fourth tier. I'll start off with the Broncos, who have had a good couple of weeks. The winners of 3 in a row, big win in Philly. I think, namely, sitting at 4-2 right now. I still just don't love the run game, and I know they're relying on it more with J.K. Dobbins. But I think when it comes down to it, and you play good run defenses, especially in the division, which they've already lost to the Chargers, and we'll play the Chiefs later on in the season, of course. I don't think they're going to have enough to get it done. So I think they just fall out there. The Vikings, I also have in here 3-2. They just got a win in London after losing in Dublin. Bit of an interesting schedule there. Now they just had their bye and come out of it this week. Hurt quarterbacks are tough, man. And while I had a bit more confidence in the team going into the season, I think Kevin O'Connell can really only do too much. And whether J.J. McCarthy comes back, next week or the week after or whatever it may be, with that division, I don't think it's going to be good enough. So the Vikings are just out. The Chicago Bears are in here as well, too. Winners of a couple in a row, or 3 in a row, actually, now after starting off 0-2. I'm happy with Caleb Williams. I think he's been good. I just don't think their defense is good enough in the long term. They probably should have lost that game yesterday to the Commanders if Bill and Jaden Daniels don't have that weird slip fumble in the rain. And if Daniel Carlson doesn't get his kick blocked the week prior, next thing you know, this is a 1-4 team. So how good really are the Bears? The Niners are the next team I have in this category. Yeah, they're just so injured. And I think you go through this entire season so far and, they lose Kittle week 1. You're like, oh, maybe that'll be what they, can't win without. They still win. Next thing you know, Brock Purdy gets hurt, okay, maybe they're fucked here. They don't have their quarterback. Nope, they still win. Nick Bosa, season-ending injury the next week. Yeah, they're probably fucked. I think that they end up losing to the Jags that week. But they come back and beat the Rams, and that upset the very next week. And then Fred Warner gets hurt. And I think that's the guy, they just can't win without. He's, in my eyes, one of the best players, if not the best player in the entire National Football League. He's so instinctual, impacts the run game, the pass game, all different ways that you possibly can. He's so smart. One of those like Luke Kuechly type middle linebackers that impacts the game in ways that you just don't even realize when you're watching. And with him being out, they're cooked, man. Like I know Baker and the Bucs are a great team, but with all the guys missing for the Bucs, that was a game that you would expect them to probably win. And I know the Niners are missing a lot of guys too, but I think at this point with their division, I know they're 3-0 in the division, which really helps, but I just don't see it when it comes down to it. I think they're going to be in a rough stretch of games here, and their defense is probably going to allow a good amount of points. And the last team in playoff hopefuls is the Atlanta Falcons, and they're sitting at 3-2 right now. But they did have a loss where they lost 30-0 to the Panthers, and that still scares me because that can happen against anybody. And wins over the Commanders and Bills are great. Vikings as well too. I think they're close. I just think that they're probably the team that wins 10 games and doesn't make the playoffs. So. Maybe that game against the Panthers costs them. Usually, a loss like that inter-division is what does cost you a playoff spot. But they are the last team that I have that doesn't make the playoffs. I think that's the amount of teams that would make the playoffs. All right, moving on to the third tier, the playoff teams for me is what I called it. What do you have here, and who is in this third tier?
I have the teams that are pretty fun, but for how long? Let's start off with the Denver Broncos. Pretty good explanation of them. They're 4-2, but they are the most conservative team I've seen all season long. I mean, they last week, especially against the Jets, they're like, nope, it's cool. We'll beat them by 2 points. It's okay. We don't need to score touchdowns. They had one lucky play to the fullback and basically didn't let Bo Nix do anything. If that's the way that they can beat good defenses, good for them. But it's going to be impossible to pick them to beat a team like the Eagles again after what we've seen. Similar to them, the New England Patriots, also at 4-2, right? Running game, right? For me, it's even more frustrating because I had to trade these dudes away in fantasy. But you either got to make up your mind or come up with something new, McDaniels. Come on, man. I do like Drake May, though. I'm just not sure this is the year. There may be more like a 9-8 team. San Francisco Niners, I also have here, a very fun team to watch. Of course, great players on the offense too, but like you mentioned, I think the defense is bound to fall apart at some point without Fred Warner. He's like, your Willis, Navarro Bowman type of guy that they always have on their great teams, and now they don't have him anymore. The Chargers, somehow, again, 4-2. They start off so great, barely pull away from the Dolphins, man. I thought the Dolphins were going to get that one. Turns out the Dolphins suck. The Chargers are still alive. How long? I don't know. I do like Harbaugh and the quarterback, Herbert, of course, though. And then Pittsburgh is the last team I have in this tier. 4-1, but I've been very open about this. Arthur Smith, I do not trust at all. Looks like Gainwell and Warren are a pretty good duo for my guy Aaron Rodgers. If I can say that. But yeah, maybe it's like the Patriots for you. Because they played so bad against the Jets week 1, I just have like a bad taste in my mouth about the Steelers team. But of course, no one is really close to them right now in the North. So they're up here. They're really fun, but for how long?
Yeah. I have 6 teams in this playoff teams tier. All teams that, probably going to make the playoffs, but I just don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, which obviously kind of lands you in the spot. Seahawks are the first team that I have here. They're in a good spot, sitting at 4-2 now after a big win in Jacksonville this past weekend. They're just not great at anything, and I think that's what hurts them in the long run. If you're not Jackson Smith and Jigba, Sam Darnold was not throwing you the ball, which I think is an interesting thing, but it's working out for them right now. Regardless, probably going to make the playoffs. I see them better as the Niners now at this point in the season with all the injuries. Next up is the Chargers. Great starts to the season. Since then, they've been quite shaky, still 4-2, but the defense has started to falter quite a bit, and that's not something I expected to see at all from them. Offensive line has dealt with some struggles with Joe Alt being out, but I do think he comes back either next week or the week after. With him back, they should be fine. I just don't think they're as good as the Chiefs now anymore. The Indianapolis Colts are the next team that I have sitting at 5-1. And maybe this is just me not being sold on them yet and not believing that Daniel Jones can be a guy that takes the team to the Super Bowl, which still sounds crazy to even say as a possibility. But they've been great. Their defense is opportunistic. The run game is phenomenal. Danny Dimes has been great at getting the ball to his playmakers. So maybe there's something there. I just don't know if I can do it yet. But hey, it wouldn't be the first guy to leave the Giants and then go on to win the Super Bowl in his first year off that team. Next up, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. 4-2, big win over Kansas City on Monday night a couple weeks ago. I just don't trust Trevor Lawrence at this point. And if I said that 6 years ago, I would have thought I was crazy. But not anymore, because what he does just feels idiotic sometimes. And he's erratic. He doesn't always make the right play. It just comes down to decision-making stuff, too. He's uber talented with his arm. I know that. But it's kind of got that Sam Darnold feel to him at this point. And I think that scares me. So the Jags are just off. They have a great defense. I think a solid run game under Liam Cohen, though. The Steelers, the unction is vibing right now. They're 4-1. They're playing good football. Their running backs are Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, yet it seems to be one of the best groups in the NFL so far this season, shockingly. The defense is good, but they're old as shit. And I think that's probably going to hurt them when it comes down to it. And, week 19, if you're playing in the divisional round of the playoffs, it's going to be really tough to get through with all those guys hurting that much. And the last team I have is the Commanders. Interesting start to the season, interesting loss yesterday. I want to just, chalk it up to wet weather and stuff, and that'd be fine if it was your second loss, but that's your third loss already. You're 3-3. The division isn't very easy. I do think they're probably the team that's most likely to be okay with the 3-3 record and make it out because J.J. Daniels is such a great player. Terry McLaurin's coming back as well, too, and I think when you have those two guys, you're probably going to be all right. But I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to the NFC Conference Championship like they did last year. I just don't think that's going to happen. So that's my playoff team section. Now on to the second tier. Who's in this tier? What'd you name it? And what did you put them there?
This is my biggest tier of the entire video. These are the playoff teams for me. 6 teams. Basically, at this point in the season, I expect all these guys to be playing in January. So we'll start off with Buffalo. I kept them up here after the loss. The big thing is obviously Josh Allen's amazing. It can come back from almost anything. We saw that week 1 against Baltimore. But now it looks like the defense is a little worse than everybody thought. Like there's actually certain matchups like against the running teams like Atlanta last night where you get gashed so bad, it's just too much to come back from. So I'm going to take them down from that top tier, although I expect them to be playing in big games. Also, the Green Bay Packers after them, 3-1-1. It's just been really ugly. Another team that they have a lot of offensive weapons that have been hurt so far this year. Even Micah Parsons has been playing through injuries this season, but really ugly, man. Not a team I would say is ready for the Super Bowl, but they got a lot of time. I feel the same way about the Detroit Lions at 4-2. They've been beating who they're supposed to, except Kansas City. They couldn't move the ball. Week 1 against the Packers, who I have right next to them, they just didn't look like the same team. And I think they're going to be okay in the regular season, but I don't know if I can pick them to go to the Super Bowl like I was thinking last year. Also got Jacksonville in here, the last AFC team I'll talk about for this tier. Pretty good so far. Pretty good, right? Trevor Lawrence has kind of been a dog this season. A lot of concerns, but he's playing through it, and it's all about the defense with them. So Pretty cool. Liam Cohen's done a great job. And then we'll finish it off with the two NFC West teams, the Rams and the Seahawks. Um, I guess this is probably because they're the least injured teams out of the group, but they are still pretty banged up too. Seattle's defense, we'll see how long they can hang on for. Um, LA, they got the job done against Baltimore. But again, another team that hasn't been playing the prettiest games, also coming off a loss to the 49ers. Geez, that was a tough one to spit out. But yeah, those are the playoff teams. 6 teams I expect to easily have a spot in January.
Yeah, kind of a similar idea here. Although I already did playoff teams as one of my tiers. So this tier is wouldn't be completely shocked if they made the Super Bowl. Maybe a longer title, so I probably should have workshopped that. But I do have 5 teams here. First of which is the LA Rams. Weird loss on Thursday night against the Niners. I'll chalk that up as their weird loss of the season, which you get. They lose Puka. They're probably going to lose this week if Puka's out to Jacksonville and London because I guess it's a home game now for Jacksonville at this point when they're playing in London. But even if you're 4-3, it seems good. Stafford's solid. The defense is good. The run game's solid. And when you have Puka, Devontae, you can trust those guys at the wide receiver position. I think they'll be good long term. And I wouldn't be shocked if they win the NFC. Another NFC team in here is the Detroit Lions. Weird game on Sunday night. They lose to the Chiefs. Although if you lose to Kansas City in Kansas City, how bad can that really be? Rough game. They couldn't run the ball for some reason, which is a weird thing for Detroit to have happen. I think they'll be fine long term as well too. Defense is not the best, but their offense usually puts up 40 points, so it doesn't often matter. I do think they could be susceptible to those really good NFC teams like the Rams or the Eagles or the Packers that we'll get to in a little bit. The Eagles are the next team I talked about or will talk about. Obviously, terrible losses back-to-back now with the Broncos and the Giants, but when you won the Super Bowl the most recent year and you were without Jalen Carter, your best defensive player this past week, I think it's reasonable to say that the Eagles will be just fine. Saquon really hasn't gotten it going yet. Their offense in general really hasn't gotten it going yet unless it's Dallas Goedert. Which I like. But
yep.
Anyways, Eagles will be fine. I'm not worried about them at all, even with a rough loss against the Giants, which I think I said I would be worried about if they do lose. But I still think they're the best team in that division for sure. The Packers are the next team. Defense hasn't played as good as what we've expected, I think. Obviously, by a week ago, Joe Flacco and the Bengals this past week, and then obviously that 40-point tie a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football. They'll be fine long-term as well, too. Maybe I see him at a wide receiver at the deadline. I don't know, but I'm not sure if that's even a spot for them to do it. Maybe Jacoby Myers could be interesting for them. Just another guy for Jordan Love to throw the ball to. It's still fine. I just think maybe their offense isn't as good as these other teams. And then the Bills. Back-to-back losses that are kind of head-scratchers. The offense kind of went silent in both of them. Maybe a bit of concern there. James Cook didn't have the best games either. Could be worried there. The defense isn't great, that's for sure. But as long as you have the MVP, you can kind of be trustworthy there. And with how the AFC is pretty wide open right now, with not one team pulling away and that team pulling away being the Colts, I think the Bills making Super Bowl is still definitely within reason, and I would not be shocked if they got there. Which leads us to the Super Bowl favorites tier, is what I called it. I think that's probably you called it as well, too. Who do you have here? And, yeah, go.
Yeah, top tier contenders. These are the 4 teams that I basically would have in the championship games if we were to do a bracket today. So 2 NFC, 2 AFC. We'll start with Tampa Bay. 5-1. They got as many injuries as almost every team in the league outside of maybe San Francisco, and they just don't care. They're on to like their 4th right guard. Baker doesn't care. He'll just go the other way on his runs now. Now Emeka Buka gone. So again, another one of those situations where might have been overkill to bring in extra receivers, but now they're down to Tez Johnson again. Like we talked about, fantastic catch from him. Another fantastic run from Baker. Definitely still on top of the MVP ladder if we were to do it again this week, maybe again next week. So good for them. I think they would probably play Philly in an NFC championship with the current seeding right now. So I still have Philly up at the top. I'm not as worried. Just those games in the East, especially on a short week, anything is possible, man. We've seen crazy stuff from the NFC East recently. I'm a little worried about, individual players, but as a unit, I think Philly is going to be fine in the regular season. Move on to AFC. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. When it's not in Brazil, they've won most of the really big games that they were supposed to. And just want to double check the record. It is 3-2, right? 3-3?
3-3.
3-3. Okay, yeah. No bye yet for them. But still, Patrick Mahomes still making plays. No run game at all, really, against Detroit. It didn't matter because the defense was so great. So I still think, even though we've dropped them down into the 10 range on our power rankings, in this kind of tier list, they're still up at the top. And I'm going to include Indianapolis, too, up here. I think the hardest part about this is getting over what we know or what we think we know about Daniel Jones, because the rest of this team is fantastic. The defense is amazing. Jonathan Taylor's been unstoppable. They have a lot of playmakers that are finally getting the ball. How will Daniel Jones look at the end of the season? Will he survive the season? The O-line has been fine this year, even though in past years, that's the worst thing about their team. That's the only worry I have for him. Because, hey, man, even Nick Foles beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. It's possible.
My Super Bowl favorites. I have two teams in here, one from each conference. So I'll start off with old reliable, the Chiefs. 3-3, doesn't matter. Rashee Rice is coming back. I think their defense will be fine. I think Patrick Mahomes, with 6 wide receivers that he can go to, will be very good for the rest of the season. So Kansas City would be the team if I had to place money on an AFC team making the Super Bowl, it would be the Chiefs. And then in the NFC side, if the Super Bowl would have happened today, they probably wouldn't win. But if it would happen in February and the guys feel up the way that you expect them to, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to be in this at this point. If you look at their offense and it goes Baker with Bucky Irving and Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin and even Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson, all these guys going down the line, that's an offense. And we haven't seen that offense complete together one game, and they've still been amazing. And Baker Mayfield is the MVP through 6 weeks of the NFL season, which we did not expect to hear at all. The defense isn't a crazy group. Definitely isn't the best in the league, but it's formidable. And I think it's good enough when you have the MVP of the league on your offensive side of the ball. I know they lost to the Eagles, but if you take away that block punt, then they're probably 5-0 at this point. Crazy also because the Jets almost beat them. That's just how this NFL season has gone so far. No undefeated teams through week 5 even. This is the second week now that we've had no undefeated teams. So crazy NFL season. This could definitely change. But we'll check back up on this in a couple of weeks and see where we're at for that. Which brings us now to the MLB. We have MLB player, pitcher, and rookie of the week. Player of the week, Skyler, who'd you choose?
Yeah, shout out to Kerry Carpenter. He was absolutely unstoppable. I liked your tweets about Kerry Bonds. Definitely was on pace for something like that if they won. But I'm going to go with Jorge Polanco. It's just 5 for 19, but there also was a 15-inning game in the middle of that, which doesn't help anybody's batting average. But he's here because the Mariners needed him to get past Detroit. Massive RBIs in a series where those are hard to find. I believe it was 6 of them for him, and a big homer up at Tarek Skubal.
I went with Josh Naylor as my player of the week here. He goes 9 for 18, 2 doubles, a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 stolen bases. One of those stolen bases really cool. Helping him in the I think it was for the sac fly or the Leo Rivas base hit, but he did score one of the runs in that big Game 5 victory over the Tigers. Hit a homer coming back home to Toronto. I know that was a cool moment for him yesterday. And Josh Naylor gets my player of the week, which takes us to the pitcher of the week. A couple of phenomenal outings for sure from some starters.
Yeah, Skubal had 13 Ks, so there's an argument that he was the most dominant player of the postseason so far. But my representative will be Blake Snell after last night. He goes 8 shutout, giving up 1 hit, no walks, 10 strikeouts in game 1 of the NLCS in Milwaukee, by the way, too. And just the thing about last night's game with Blake Snell was it was an absolute shocker when someone actually reached base for Milwaukee on him last night. So that's why I'm giving it to him.
Yeah, I had Tariq Skubal penciled in here for the longest time, but Blake Snell was ridiculous last night. 8 innings, only 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 10 Ks. He had a lot of very short, quick innings against a team that doesn't allow a lot of very short, quick innings to anyone. And I mean, we even saw that when he came out versus Roki and Blake Trinan. Like that, bats just got so much better from the Brewers, and to see somebody neutralize that lineup the way that he did was very special, and is why he got so much money from the Dodgers this offseason. So Blake Snell, my pitcher of the week, just still underrated at this point. On the Rookie of the Week, not a ton of them, but who'd you choose here?
Yeah, I think Melton deserves a shout from Detroit, but I'm sticking with teams that won the series. So I'll give it to Jacob Mizorowski because in the deciding game 5 for Milwaukee, the Miz comes out of the pen. He goes 4 innings, gives up just 1 run against the Cubs offense that had been on fire leading up to that game. Milwaukee wins 3-1. So Mizorowski's a big reason why they did that. Also, shout out to Chad Patrick. He pitched an inning in that game too.
I did go Troy Melton for my Rookie of the Week. 2 games, 4 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 4 Ks in his 2 outings. And I know he put himself into a jam in, I think it's the 9th inning of that game 5 against the Mariners. It would have been very easy, give up a hit in a road atmosphere, ball game over. Nobody's really like, oh, fuck this guy. That's a rookie. What is he supposed to do in that situation? But for him to buckle down and get out of that jam really speaks something to me about him and his competitive spirit. And I'm, not really that competitive spirit type guy anymore. I look definitely more into numbers and whatnot, but that was that, intangible moment from Troy Melton that I think can help define his career and getting through big moments, because that's probably going to be the biggest moment that he pitches in for a while, unless the Tigers, do something crazy in these coming years. Troy Melton is a stud. He's going to be a stud for a long time, and I think he showed that on Friday night.
Mental toughness, like we talked about yesterday.
Brings us to the season grades. 4 of them: the Yankees, the Phillies, the Cubs, and the Tigers, who we just talked about. We'll start off with the Bronx Bombers, who lost to the Blue Jays in 4 games in the ALDS.
I gave them an A- for this season. I thought there was no way they were getting back to the World Series, so I won't kill their grade. They went a little further than I thought they would. And they didn't win the division either, so I won't give them anything crazy. But they did win a tough wild card series against their rivals. And, despite a great season from big dogs like Judge, Max Fried, Jazz, I'm not sure if they have the brightest or even the second brightest future in their division. So I won't give them more than an A-, even though it was a great season.
For the Yankees, 94 wins, 68 losses. Great year for the offense. Aaron Judge was Aaron Judge. Cody Bellinger, Judge Chisholm, Trent Grisham, Ben Rice, Giancarlo Stanton, Austin Wells all had pretty solid seasons. Navigated some interesting seasons from Anthony Volpe and Jason Dominguez, which I think they troubleshooted well. The rotation dealt with a ton of injuries and still turned out great. Max Fried and Carlos Rodon were a great 1-2, even though there technically should be a 2-3 with Garrett Cole when he's healthy. Will Warren was healthy all season and flashed some good stuff, even though he wasn't maybe the greatest by just the ERA numbers. Cam Schlittler, oh my God, Schmidt. I'm blanking. Clark Schmidt. I don't know why I was blanking on his first name. He was good in his outings. Louis Eel as well too. All good in their opportunities. I thought it was an interesting year from their bullpen standpoint. I think Devin Williams honestly probably cost them their season when it comes down to it. He blew some games for them throughout the year, and I know still resulted in like a 1.4 WAR season for a reliever, which is good, but you take out a couple of those outings, turn them into good outings, and you're looking at the Yankees winning the division, not having to go to Toronto those first 2 games. Probably plays out a whole lot differently there. Besides that, Bednar, Fernando Cruz, Luke Weaver, all really good. Even with some impending free agents that they have, I expect them to rebound well in 2026. But for me, this team was better than the 2024 squad, and they performed worse. So the grade cannot be that high. They were the best team in the AL on paper for me. They were the team that should have gone to the World Series, I'd expect. If you were to do a simulation, like 100 times, they'd probably be the team that goes there the most in the AL. They are the Yankees, which I think means something. And it's now 16 years that they have not won the World Series. And when you keep on putting out these good teams and you're wasting years from Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger and these pitchers that you have as well too, it's an F. That simple at this point. It's an F for me.
Okay.
So if the Yankees don't get there, they don't do it, and they have all the resources to do it, I think it has to be an F for me. So maybe harsh, but that's what the Yankees are at this point. On to the Phillies, who won 96 games and lost in 4 games. 4 games?
4 games.
Yeah, 4 games to the Dodgers.
Yeah, complete opposite mindset for me here. I gave the Phillies an A still because I think they dominated for most of the season. And I think everybody realized that they just ran out of juice right when they get to the postseason. So I don't think it is like a Yankee situation. Still taking the Dodgers to 11 innings on the road in an elimination game when your ace is supposed to be there, but he's out for the year. I think that's very impressive. And I'm not as worried about these guys' future. I think they could potentially rebuild their team in a specific way designed to beat the Dodgers better than the Padres could. So I'm going to give them a better grade than I gave the Padres a couple weeks ago. I'm going to give them an A. I just think they got really unlucky this year.
Phillies, they win 96 games. It's a very Philly offense, super consistent. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper all have really good years. Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh find themselves with solid seasons. Guys like Remuto, though, Alec Bohm, Nick Castellanos definitely underperform. But not on that crazy, drastic level, get them out of the city type stuff. The rotation was amazing. Wheeler was phenomenal before he had to be out with his dealio. Christopher Sanchez was a Cy Young candidate. Jesus Luzardo threw 183 innings. Ranger Suarez was good as usual. Aaron Nola was better after coming back from his injury. I definitely don't know if I'd call him good. I think he finished with like a 6.0 ERA, but still, it comes down to the bullpen with this team. It's been the same issue for them 3 straight years now and why they haven't made the World Series. And I know they addressed it better this year with getting Johan Duran, but it's still not enough. And when you have guys in the minors that you can trade and go ahead and get that top-tier bullpen and don't do it, it's going to harm your grade quite a bit. I didn't expect this team to win the World Series because of the Dodgers, but they're wasting like how many more good years does Trey Turner have? How many more good years does Bryce Harper have? How many more good years does Zach Wheeler have? Like at this point, you're wasting the opportunity to win the World Series, and your window is closing quicker than what you might expect. Kyle Schwarber is a free agent, and he's gonna. I don't think he'll decline at all because of how he plays, but he's going to require a lot of money. So I'll give him a D. It's harsh to get a bit of a better grade because you had to play the Dodgers, which is rough, and a bit of a better grade because of the Zach Wheeler injury. That's why it's not an F, but those grade additions don't really do much. It's still a D season for me. This team is built to win the World Series, and they didn't get there. On to the Cubs, who won 92 games.
I gave the Cubs a B for this season. They lasted longer than Vegas thought they would, but still the offensive explosion at the end of the season leads to nothing other than beating San Diego. So, it gives me a little hope for the future. A lot of guys stepped up like PCA, guys in the rotation that had to come in for injuries. But, now I wonder what happens with Kyle Tucker. Can they actually find a real 3-hitter when/if Kyle Tucker walks away? I couldn't give them a good grade. If another team, this is the team that I'm upset that they didn't go get a couple more rentals like Seattle. If they really wanted to beat Milwaukee, they would have done it. And I think Philly just got screwed having to go to LA for those last couple games. That's why I didn't kill Philly.
Yeah. Chicago 92 wins. It's a very fun offense. PCA and Nico Horner were phenomenal, both offensively and defensively this year. Kyle Tucker was good for about 80% of the year. Michael Bush, Carson Kelly, Ian Happ, Suzuki all produced offensively. Dansby Swanson had a very typical 3.3 WAR season. It was overall a very good offensive year, and this was one of the best groups in baseball the entirety of the season. Pitching, I think, overachieved without their ace and Justin Steele. Matt Boyd and Cade Horton were great. They got valuable innings from guys like Colin Ray and James Tyone. Shota was also good when he was healthy, even though it didn't output a crazy WAR number. The bullpen also saw a ton of good seasons from vets like Brad Keller, Caleb Thielbar, Andrew Kittredge, and Drew Pomeranz. With that all being said, Kyle Tucker's a free agent, and I'd also expect some regression from their pitching in 2026. So I don't know how long this quote unquote window is going to be for this team. It could be done this year. That again proves them to, probably being able to, or should have done more at the deadline. I do think they overachieved this season, and maybe they didn't want to blow up their future just for this 1 year. I'll give them a B plus though. I thought it was a great year for them as a whole. Definitely overachieved. I just don't think they're going to be that crazy this next year. I think the Brewers will continue to be better. Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. I gave them a B plus, and it didn't end up mattering that much. But the way that they lost the division to Cleveland is just horrible. But a pretty good grade because the offense was way better this season. Maybe if you don't lose Jackson Jobe and many, many pitchers, we could see him still playing right now. But that's not the case. Honestly, I have no idea how to project that division, so I'm not going to try to. But I would imagine Detroit doesn't fall off too far.
Yeah. 87 wins for Detroit. I gave them a B as a grade. Not a very flashy offense. Dylan Dingler, Zach McKinstry produced team's best years offensively as a whole. That actually also includes defense. But from the B WAR or F WAR perspective, Riley Green and Torque have some solid offensive years. They got a good signing in Gleyber Torres, which is cool, but he's back to being a free agent. Guys like Wenceel Perez, Kerry Carpenter, Jahmai Jones all have big moments throughout the year. And Javi Baez wasn't a lost cause, which is a cool story to say the least. The pitching staff is Tarek, and the others. He goes back-to-back Cy Young. They did have improved secondary options around him compared to last year in Flaherty and Casey Mize. Jackson Jobe, Reese Olson, Troy Milton were also all solid options when they were healthy and up in the big leagues. And the bullpen, very A.J. Hinch-like, solid 5 to 8 options that he went with and navigated very well. I think the reality with this team is that they're just never going to win a World Series. Unless they, find that 2019 Washington Nationals perfect storm, it's not going to happen because the offense isn't there. And Tariq School's probably only there for next year. Unless they, do something crazy and lock them up, which I just don't see happening.
No.
It's a B, but that's okay because I don't think anybody expected the Tigers to win the World Series this year. Brings us to college football. Maybe a quicker preview and Heisman Watch because we got 8 minutes left.
Yeah, I only got 8 minutes on the timer, but I do want to talk a little bit about next week's college football slate because there's a bunch of great games, once again, just like there always are. Start off Friday night. 4-1 Louisville goes to number 2 Miami, who could very well go undefeated in the regular season with no Clemson on their schedule. So this is one of their last big tests to see. They are 14-point favorites, but Louisville always puts up a fight. So a fun Friday night ACC game. We'll go to Saturday, 9 a.m., double-ranked SEC matchup to start off the morning. Number 10 LSU goes to 17 Vandy. Vandy is a small favorite at home. Either way, Pavia versus Nussmeier is going to be one of the better quarterback matchups we see until we get to the playoffs. So it should be a good game. Also in the morning, if you're more focused on the NFL quarterbacks, Oklahoma plays South Carolina. So can either John Mateer or Lenore Sellers just have slightly better weeks because these guys have to do so much. And when they don't play a perfect game, they're probably going to lose, like what happened with Mateer and his hand last week against Texas. At 12:30 on Saturday, top 10 matchup in the SEC. Number 5 Ole Miss goes to number 9 Georgia. The Bulldogs have recovered pretty well since their loss to Alabama. Ole Miss didn't look great against Wazoo, but this is a really big game for Trinidad Chambliss and Lane Kiffin. They want to prove that they're legit, so this is a tough game on the road against Georgia. At 4:30, there's a bunch of great games in this window. We'll keep it simple, though. Number 20 USC goes to 13 Notre Dame. Old school rivalry. And once again, it's always going to come down to USC's offense against Notre Dame's defense. Can Jaden Maeva score 30 plus on these guys? I think he can. I think he can. Also, number 11 Tennessee goes to Tuscaloosa. So that's at number 6 Alabama. Ty Simpson has been excellent, but we know Tennessee can put up some points on the board. Bama's favored by a touchdown. I like Bama. And then at 5, the last game, massive Big 12 game, the Holy War. 23 Utah goes to 15 BYU. Both teams love to run the crap out of this ball, but there's definitely some Pac-12 / Mountain West after dark vibes for this game, even though it's not at 7:30, it's at 5. So maybe not a lot of people will be watching, but I still think it'll be a pretty good game.
All right. You got 3 minutes for Heisman Watch. You're on, Chris Berman.
All right, perfect. Honorable mention, Ahmad Hardy will drop out of the top 5. Only 12 touches in a loss against Alabama. Not his fault. Still got my eye on him. Also, the Ohio State Buckeye boys, Julian Sand, Jeremiah Smith. We're watching you. Into the top 5, USC quarterback Jaden Maeva. He's back on the list. Number 3 in the nation in passing, the most efficient passer in the nation. USC was not supposed to be good this year, man, but him, Mekhi Lemon, the run game, have got the Trojans back in the hunt. Number 4, Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed. I don't know how much I trust A&M in general, but Marcel Reed has put up some pretty big numbers this year in big games. They crushed Florida. They beat Notre Dame. He's got 15 touchdowns, and they're ranked 4th in the nation. So we got to watch him. Maybe not an NFL player, but very electric. Number 3, Fernando Mendoza, Indiana quarterback. Definitely closer to a game manager than a true number 1 guy. But so are the other guys above him here that we'll get into. So there's a chance if Indiana keeps doing their thing, keeps winning games, he could win the Heisman. He's got 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. And he looked so much better than Dante Moore. By the way, I was right. I never put him on my list. I'm keeping him off. I don't trust Dante Moore yet. I think he needs to go back to school for 1 year. I'm not saying he's bad. Number 2, Miami quarterback Carson Beck. I've said it before. I think there's a very real chance the Hurricanes enter the playoff as the number 1 overall seed. Carson Beck, 11 touchdowns to 3 picks because of a rough game against South Florida, but he's still one of the best passers in the nation, 73% completion percentage. And at the top, I feel like every week we got a new guy. I'm going Ty Simpson, Alabama, 16 touchdowns, 1 pick. Everybody watches Alabama, and everybody outside of that area hates Alabama. After he lost to Florida State, I thought they were screwed. Ty Simpson has been one of their best quarterbacks ever. And when you look at the numbers. So if he keeps this pace, he is winning the Heisman Trophy. I don't know if he will, but at this point, when you're at a school like Alabama and you perform like this against the big dogs, you know, you're going to get the awards. That's the Heisman Watch.
On we go to layup sport predictions. We'll go through these quick. Last week it was rough. 0-4. I had the Bills -4.5 versus Atlanta on Monday night. Together had Philly -6.5 versus the Giants on Thursday night. Both those teams don't win outright. This week, I have the Raiders +12.5 at Kansas City. No Brock Bowers, but the Raiders usually play well in Kansas City. It's been that way the past couple of years at this point, going back to that Christmas game in 2023. I do think it remains a somewhat close game. 10-point game, I think, is reasonable here. That's my layup.
All right, a game I literally just talked about. I got USC covering 8.5 at Notre Dame. Boise just went to Notre Dame and almost covered a ridiculous number for them. I mean, Boise, I watch them every week. They are not that good this year, and they looked really good against Notre Dame. I think USC can score a lot of points on them.
Full predictions last week. I had Detroit money line +115. That was football. Didn't happen, of course. Skyler had Miami over the Chargers at +175. Very close. But too much time left for Herbo and some poor tackling from the Chargers, not the Chargers, the Dolphins defense, causes that one to go red. This week I have Atlanta money line +115 on Sunday Night Football at San Francisco or at Santa Clara. No Fred Warner. That's all you need to know. Bijan Robinson's averaging like 180 yards a game, it feels like. And then Alex loves that, but he's still going to trade him. So Atlanta money line.
Yeah, I got an NFL game for my bowl prediction. One you just talked about earlier, too. And I'm on the same page. Jacksonville plus 130. The Rams are fine, but with no Puka, how's the offense going to look? How much do they trust Kyron Williams? I won't say it's a home game for Jacksonville and London, but they're the only team that goes there every single year, no matter what, other than maybe the Jets over the last 5 years because of our owner. But still, I like Jacksonville. They're playing really well. That's the bold prediction, just in time.
All right, that'll do it for episode 265. Next week, a whole bunch of things. So we'll get into that when that happens, though. We will see y'all then. Any parting notes?
NBA preseason? Haven't watched.
Yeah, well, we got the full in-depth NBA season predictions next week. Maybe not that in-depth.
Slightly in-depth.
Could be funnier. Yeah.
All right. See you next week.
Peace.